Good. Hi, everyone. I'm Dani. This is Chris.
Nice to see you.
We're excited. We both are really big fans of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and it's one of our favorite topics. So, Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Harman as we jump in?
Let's do it. All right, so I'm Chris Epple, as the picture says, and I oversee marketing for Harman Consumer Audio. And let me just set that up for you. So Harman's got three groups: consumer audio, automotive, and then cloud services. Consumer audio is anything you can buy at an electronics store. So that's what we oversee. And I have the Americas, so North, South, and Central America. And the way we break up our team, so JBL is the primary brand that we oversee, but we have about 11 different brands that each get a little bit of our time, but JBL gets the lion's share of that. And then my team for marketing is broken out into a product team, which oversees kind of long-term growth, 2 to 3 years out. Go-to-market team, which is launch and beyond, and a PR and comms team, which is like your amplification, your mouthpiece. They also have influencer, which will be a lot of what we'll talk about today.
Sounds like a lot. I didn't realize you had South America, the Americas. So now I have more questions.
Languages.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So, when we talked before, we talked a lot about Gen Z and some of the programming that you do. I know my kids are in college and are probably the perfect target for you. You want to share a little bit about your program and how you really thought about Gen Z during that college life stage?
Yeah, so I've been with the company 7 years. And very, very early on, one of the conversations we were having was, we're good at this millennial thing, but what about that next generation? And funny enough, Gen Z wasn't even a term yet. It was like the next group. And so one of the realities is, when you're in college, you're making some of your first informed adult decisions, right? And we're not a cheap brand. Like I come from Pepsi, 99 cents, right? We're a brand where you're making an emotional connection. You're doing research and you're deciding, I'm going to spend this $300 on this brand, not this brand. So we really wanted to get into the place with the college market where we're building that loyalty, where they're like, well, I've made an informed decision as an adult that I'm going to buy a JBL, and then hopefully that will carry with me. And we always talk about lifetime of value. So I've made that decision, right? I then kind of get a little older. So now I'm in my 20s. I have my first job, my first apartment. Okay, so now I need like a component system. All right, now I own a house, right? I'm a little older. So now I need some sound bars, and I need speakers for my car. Now I have kids. So now they need JBL products. So we thought the college market was really an anchor point for us to go in and get to that market and build a lifetime of value. And that was the spirit. So we launched something about in 2019 called JBL Campus. And what it is, and it's had many lifetimes, and something tells me we'll talk about that. But it's basically an influencer marketing program at the core. And we find influencers from across the country that are across sports, music, and then we call it culture. So it could be gaming, it could be fashion, it could be just content creators. And we build content with them to create this larger narrative of this campus program that, again, it's probably 20, 30 schools. It's continuing to evolve, but it's completely influencer-based, and it's around building loyalty with their fans, their communities, and telling the JBL story in their tone, in their voice to their people. It was the longest answer in history.
No, I love that. How do you, one of the challenges that we see with our clients at Razorfish when we do any kind of influencer marketing is how to let the influencer start to put it into their own voice and their own tone and give up a little bit of control as a brand. How do you guys think about that? And how do you manage that process to ensure it's true to the brand, but it's true to their voice as an influencer?
Yeah, and that's so very fair. Influencer marketing is it only works if it's in their tone and their voice, right? And so what we'll do is we'll give them products and we'll give them like a theme. So we'll say true wireless, and we have the first, for anyone, I'm not pitching products, but the first interactive screen. So it'll be, talk about the interactive screen and what that means. And clearly there's some control over that. So we have two agencies who we're very close with, Havas, who's in the front of the room, and Learfield, who's in the back of the room. That's not by design, they're all friends. But so Learfield manages all of our athletes, because we have a whole athlete platform, right? So they're looking at like, what are they saying? Is it on brand? Is it on tone for what we're trying to represent from the sports side? And then Havas, obviously, looking at it through our overall brand positioning and lenses. So there's those screens involved, and there's re-edits and things like that. But the reality, though, at the end of the day, it is their tone, their voice, their fans. That's the key. And JBL has a very strong feeling, and we call it making voices heard. We want the story of the person to be told. So one of the things I'm very proud of for this program, and I don't even know if my competitors are in the room, but I'll say other brands in their college platforms, their strategy is sign the 10 biggest quarterbacks. That's the strategy, right? Or this person just hit big, sign them. We're much more, we actually don't care about the stats. We're much more around what is the story they have to tell? What have they overcome? What have they done in their lives that makes them differentiated? So we've got tennis players, we've got people on dancing teams. We're not about the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. It's a very different strategy for how we even go about this.
That makes me think about the last panel we just had on measurement. And I know you talked about lifetime value. That's obviously, you're talking about a 10-year, 20-year horizon. Can you share a little bit about how you think about measuring this program? Because you're not going for the top athletes and by just stats. So I'm curious to learn more about how you're measuring a program like this.
Funny, I was watching that panel too going, wow, this is... So the first part of my answer is all the data people are about to fall over. So when I went into we're an electronics company, we sell 1.4 headphones per second, right? So we're volume, right? And I went in and I said, I want to build this program, and I do not want to have any sales metrics attached to this. And it was the way to be so unpopular with so many departments in the company. Finance was like, is this person even speaking? Like it was like unbelievable. But we have a very strong point of view. This is not a sales program. Our job is to build brand loyalty, drive impressions, which as you push down the funnel, impressions lead to consideration, which leads to eventually conversion. And then our other thing is get them to jbl.com. And our whole point of view, and this is for anyone who works in a marketing versus a lower funnel group, our job is to get you to the party. E-com's job is to get them to buy the product, right? So we were like, we'll get people there through the voice we're building, and then let the site leads, the people that run our sites, sell them. And that's how we do this. So it is all about impressions, reach, and we look at reach per individual, right? And we'll even make adjustments. We'll say, wow, this athlete out of University of Florida really isn't driving the reach we're looking for, or the impressions we're looking for. We'll either talk to them, or we'll do a little amplification of some of their posts. But we really look at reach and impressions, and then clicks, that's the action, is the click per athlete, or per singer, or per maker.
That's really interesting to hear of it as upper funnel. I feel like this is the brand is somehow sneaking back into the conversation after so much of the funnel's been collapsed. So it's great to hear how you guys are thinking about it and how it feeds the funnel on your website. I am curious, as much as I love Gen Z and my children, about Gen Alpha. They are, they're about to be teenagers. And, some of the research we've done at Razorfish really shows that Gen Z and Gen Alpha think about gaming very differently, and gaming is one of your areas where you target. We see that Gen Z really sees gaming as an escape, whereas Gen Alpha sees it as a place to be creative. And so I'm curious how you all are thinking about these different generations in the space, and especially when it comes to sound and audio, what your insights are around that and how you're marketing to the different generations.
Yeah, and we met last week, and you brought up this idea that Gen Alphas are the makers. It blew my mind, and funny enough, some of what we're doing sits right squarely. So I felt either like extra smart or really lucky. So I'm not sure. And I'll add, millennials, let's go back even one generation, are all about competition within the game, right? So it was winning in Madden, winning in whatever you're playing, Fortnite or whatever. You're right. And then we would say Gen Z, we always view it as it was social connectivity. A lot of it because during COVID, right, that was their kids learning how to interact with friends, and now you're in your home for 2 years. So it was the way to speak to you got online to talk to your friends. And then to your point, which I love, is that Gen Alpha is much more of a maker and a creator community. We have a good problem, which is that we actually make a product that is for gaming, right? So we are kind of stuck in a world where we have to make sure the tech is relevant, it's something breakthrough, something worth buying. So we're not just any old brand that, hey, let's just do a game, or we'll integrate into a game. We're on the finish line of some F1 game, right? So we have to really start with the technology. And for us, some of the things we looked at that were voids in the market were just weird stat, but like gamers hate the heat you get in the ear cups, right? So how do you control that? head tracking. So when you play a game, it's like, do you hear the sounds from behind you? You're playing a game that's a 360 game like Fortnite. Can you hear the sounds of someone behind you? Because your brain would process it in front. So we have 360 spherical sound in our headset. So we actually start from a technology point of view. Now, I don't love that because the reality is your job is to serve the needs of what consumers want. So we're sort of like listening, but we're like, what tech do we have? Versus like truly starting with the consumer need. But to your point, we are deeply embedded into the gaming communities for competitive gamers through our headphones and the spatial audio and 360 head tracking. But then our lower level ones are more for like, let's just get on and talk and play, and that's your $99 base product.
And I know you mentioned that you're doing activations in some of the gaming platforms that really enable Gen Alpha, like in Roblox, to start to create. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing in those different platforms?
I got a laugh when the last guy said the metaverse, and I don't disagree with the metaverse comments. And we got in a little late, just super honest. And so we've actually built out a metaverse platform. A Roblox platform. And what we've basically done, it all was a kind of a COVID insight of like take what we did on physically and then bring it online. And now our model, now that we've all sort of returned to a normal working world, is mirror them. So we do a big event called JBL Fest. It's probably the biggest activation we do throughout the year. It'll be in March this year. JBL Fest will be in JBL land in Roblox. We do a big activation in Europe called Snow Party. Snow Party existed virtually. If you couldn't make it to Switzerland, you'd go on to Roblox. So we try to replicate online and offline. And one of the primary things we're doing is we're measuring conversation. We're looking at like what are the key things consumers are talking about our brands, about our products. We have products you can put on in the game. So we're like, it's basically a mining tool for us to listen, collect data, more qualitative data, and make informed decisions with our next generation of consumers.
Yeah, I love that. I love the data gathering and learning when they're native in their space. It's interesting to hear you're bringing physical and digital and connecting those, and then thinking about the surround sound. And there's been so many releases this year in hardware for AR, VR, XR. Are you dabbling at all with sound? And not to put you on the spot, but are you dabbling with the sound that could come with the visual experience at all?
We are. You have brands that are doing it at massive scale, like what Meta's doing and things like that. We actually launched just recently sunglass frames that have sound in them. We had funny enough, we launched them in Brazil, not in the US. It was a beta market. We do look at our markets as testing grounds too, to look at like what's working. So we'll look at insights of a market of either what isn't there or what they feel like competitively they need to have, and then we'll try to learn and leverage that across markets. So Brazil, hugely into this idea of like fashion, sound is fashion. US, a lot more sophisticated, a lot more SKUs. You could pick 57 sunglass companies, 12 shades, etc. We've kind of been a little bit slower thinking about how we want to enter the US market with it, but they're really cool and you can't hear a thing, which is amazing. Like my son wears it and I'm like, are you listening to music? And it's pretty cool.
I feel like I can finally have a soundtrack to my life. As we think about these different generations and how they're interacting in the world, one of the things that we talk a lot about, that we're obsessed about, is will these kids even know what a wallet is? Like I hear stories about like they don't even know what an ATM is, and why in the world would you want that paper to come out of the ATM? They just want Apple Cash and Robux and those kinds of things. So I'm curious how you all are thinking about your commerce strategy, knowing that right now a big KPI for you, the action, is getting them to the website. And curious to hear how you're experimenting with other commerce channels, especially as these kids are, they're used to buying things all in very different places than just a website these days.
It's a real adjustment for us too. So we're kind of like the frames. We're very big into like casting a lot of nets and seeing where we're catching stuff. And so right now we are looking at social commerce across all the different social platforms where we feel like there's the right fit. We have brand safety guidelines, we got a whole bunch of different hurdles that we are constantly looking at and trying to overcome. Each one, though, is just an incubation and measurement tool for where we think the right opportunities are. The reality, which was a very honest comment to make, is pre-COVID, we were not a good e-com experience, and crazy number, 5% of our sales came from JBL.com. We were that brand you went in the store and bought. So it took us a couple of years to realize that, wow, this .com thing's pretty important. And now we're realizing, actually, maybe it's good to have, but the reality is we need to be where they are, right? Not, you can't just keep inviting them to where you are. We used to invite them to Best Buy. Then we're like, inviting to JBL.com. Now we're like, wait, we have to be where they are. So we're constantly going and looking for where the right marketplaces are. And it's similar to like, it's funny, because Gen Alpha, like, they're barely going to know what a TV commercial is. I mean, half of them don't, right? So it's similar to how and why we have this very deep influencer strategy and why we're using athletes, because that's the new commercial, right? Watching a TikTok of your favorite basketball player, your favorite whatever, go back to tennis. I played college tennis. I'm always going to talk about one tennis player. So watching that person, that means more than the 30-second spot that we used to spend a lot of money to make and a lot of money to air. Sorry to any of the TV publishers are here, but the reality is this: like that influencer, that post could have greater reach, targeted reach, and value than a 30-second. So it's really changed how we've thought, similar to our e-commerce strategy.
Yeah, and I love that you're thinking about stories and putting that kind of in the forefront. We've seen in the data that Gen Alpha actually has twice as many interests as Gen Z did at the same age, which means they're getting more and more niche. Our hypothesis is that YouTube, as the first social media platform that a lot of them are exposed to, has a very compelling algorithm that takes you down the rabbit hole, and so they're able to go deep on a lot of topics. So what we're seeing is that companies and our clients that have social and influencer strategies are looking to get more, instead of just the big influencers with huge followings, looking at more micro-influencers that can get into those niche topics. So curious how you think about that dynamic. It sounds like you've already started on the sports front of not going just for the big influencers, but ones that have personality and can still tell stories. But curious how you're thinking about that, especially as this younger generation is coming up and getting more and more niche.
So we had a great conversation about that. We call them subcultures or microcultures. And everyone talks about the funnel. And the way we actually look at influencers is you take a funnel and turn it upside down. So we have one or two significant, we'll call them major influencers. We usually put the word celebrity next to that. We've got, as the funnel widens, a couple more medium-sized ones that maybe this group in this room have heard of, or maybe your kids have heard of. And then we've got this group of micro-influencers to the point where, like, if I've heard of them, it's a problem, right? They're supposed to be super niche in super surf culture. So we'll have a skating influencer. We'll have someone who has, a certain street art. We look for people with really unique skill sets, followings, and again, it's around amplifying their voices, because a lot of what you hear with Gen Z and Gen Alpha is you want to be felt and appreciated, and by acknowledging skater community, by acknowledging street art community, you're saying, hey, we see you, we hear you, we respect you, and here's someone from your community that represents our ideals, so let's let them be a JBL ambassador. So our model is literally a funnel turned upside down. And then I will add something I actually meant to mention before, because we also have, which is, I don't know if as many brands are doing this, but we actually have a retail influencer subset as well. So we will work directly with Best Buy, directly with Amazon, and their influencers, and we'll do co-branded influencer campaigns where it's driving to Amazon. So kind of that point of like, doesn't have to be JBL anymore, right? It could just be sold on their sites. But we did, one I was really particularly proud of, we did something with the Grammys where we brought Amazon influencers to the Grammys, and they all did like these get ready with me videos and talking about their experience of the Grammys brought to you by JBL. But it was like completely it was like their influencer team ran it, and we just sort of like provided like the access and things like that, and a little tiny bit of approvals. But it was like saying, here you go, Amazon, like run this. And so very different kind of scary approach.
Yeah, it does so many new commerce models, for sure. When you talk about these, the bottom of the funnel and these influencers at the bottom, how are they the same or different than your creator strategy? Because we are definitely seeing clients where we're using more creators and not as worried about a following or an influencer. And we're seeing companies blend or go all influencer. But curious where your thinking is on content creators versus influencers, and if you blend them.
It's a fair question. And actually, in some respects, there is some similarities, and some of us team could talk about this certainly. But we have this group of creators, about 15 a quarter. They come with about 150 pieces of content. And we're using them, and in those cases, it's actually less around your following. It's more about your creative approach, your style. You know, these could be ex-graphic designers or substitute teachers who have some time, but we just like their work. So that's far less around who their followings are or what subculture that they're a part of, microculture, but more around their artistic style and creation. It started, funny enough, with we hired this third-party photographer who's amazing. He comes to a lot of our events, and he was telling us about friends of his. He's like, these guys just sit around all day making content. And so we sent a couple of these friends, a guy in San Diego, fascinating guy, and we sent his friends products and got back such great content that we started then evolving this a little bit, and then now we put it under the roof of under the hood, of our agency to say, help us oversee this and make sure it all feels on brand. And we've got, so it's called 20 times 4 is 80 a year, 100 a year, I'd say.
Wow, that's fantastic. It is interesting to see it come through so authentic from creators. And I'm curious, what kind of advice you would give to a marketer looking to, amp up or improve or, launch an influencer/creator program? Are there any tips you could share?
Snuck that one in.
I know, sorry.
Well, so I'll say it in a very humbling way, which is that the advice would be, we all have our brand guidelines and our style guides, and we stick by them, right? And you're like, oh, you can't do this to our brand. And we all believe it, right? Because we've been drinking the brand Kool-Aid forever. And one of the things we realized through influencer marketing is the reality that people don't see your brand the way you necessarily want them to see it. And so the example, I give this example a lot as like a humbling moment, was we worked with Doja Cat, and Doja Cat's this brilliant mind who just sees things at a level that we could do all the brand studies we want, all the focus groups we want, we would never think of things the way she did. And for anyone who remembers this a couple of years ago, she introduced her partnership with Jibble. And so first of all, none of us had ever realized JBL spelled Jibble. We're all like, yeah, it's true. But she did this whole thing about I work with Jibble. And we did something ridiculous, like 2 billion impressions in like 4 days, something crazy like that in like a 4-day period, where she basically just took our brand in a very healthy, safe way. It wasn't like we were like, oh my God, you've taken us to a bad place, and just changed the lens. And to the point where now people would be like, they'd call customer service, or they would go and they'd write in and be like, I'm looking for more Jibbles. And they would spell it now her way, like Jibble Jibbles, as she was saying. So like, we loved it, but it was like, and my whole point was, if you asked a brand person, like, hey, we're gonna let Doja Cat change the name of your brand, you'd be like, absolutely, like, the worst idea I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, no way. Like, but the reality was, we let her do that, and I was scared as hell. This one, I was like, I was like packing my home office at the same time as releasing it, just in case. So my advice is like, don't always drink your own Kool-Aid and think you know your brand better than consumers think of your brand.
I love that, and I think that is scary, but kudos to you for taking the risk and seeing the results pay off.
Got outvoted, so yeah, go ahead.
I know you were sharing as we wrap up here that you have some pretty exciting things coming up, maybe in the new year at South by Southwest. Is there anything you can share with the group?
Well, part of it is like, so happy to be back. But so 2019 in November, we signed a deal with South by Southwest to go in and do a partnership with them. And you can imagine how that turned out by March of 2020. So we've been like for years thinking about how and when and what was the right way to re-enter back into South by, where we just felt so strongly around the connection to our brand. So we do an event every year called JBL Fest. It's our biggest thing we do every year. And so we just actually last week inked a deal with them and our media partner, and we're going to be doing a fairly significant music activation there. And then shortly, we're also, the other thing we're doing, I can't announce it yet, but we're actually, going back to our alpha conversation, going to be entering to the high school gaming space. So we're trying two very different things, right? A return back to super high profile events, and then going super niche, super targeted with Gen Alpha in gaming. So we're going to take two swings that we hadn't taken in a while. We're excited to get back and see how, and that will actually also launch in that Roblox platform as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your tips and your advice and some of my surprise questions. Do we have any questions?
Really, Ian? Oh, what do you got? What do you got?
How much does the product, because you guys have always had really cool clips and hang build things for, other
Well, where I think we sometimes go wrong is when we let the product be the hero, right? It's around the need. So a lot of times we'll sit, kind of like I was saying on gaming, we'll sit on some really interesting innovation, and we'll go like, that's the story. But the question is like, do consumers really want that? And so we do actually challenge ourselves a lot to not make the product the hero, but make the consumer need the hero. And if we're serving your need with our product, that's a victory versus creating a product that we've convinced you to buy. So it's kind of a weird nuance. The one thing I will say though is, 80 years of, we've been around for 80 years, we kind of invented the portable Bluetooth speaker. We didn't technically invent it, but we're the #1 portable Bluetooth speaker. So we do lean on the heritage and the fact that people know us for high quality. Like when you buy a JBL, you know you're getting something of high quality. So we lean on the credential, but really try to think about a consumer need, not the product we happen to know a technology better than someone else.
I was wondering how much you weird without speaking out. When you think about navigating communication for millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, how much do you think about what screens to reach them on? Like Gen Alpha grew up with an iPad and used like Apple Watch, where as a millennial, like I literally don't have to watch TV. And I'm on my phone, but I feel like all three generations have such different consumption habits.
So 100% agree. We have a whole behavioral chart for millennial, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. So we're very mindful of that. Screens, platforms they use, right? So our Facebook language looks different than our Instagram language looks different than our Snap or our TikTok language, right? So we're very mindful of that. Screen-wise, I'd say we're there. I mean, our asset toolkit is 3 times the size it used to be, right? And costs a lot more money to create all those extra versions of things. But it's obviously clearly important that we do to acknowledge the different use cases for each. So yes, but I'd say where we're more thoughtful is the language by platform. So I left this out before when I was talking about influencers. There's so many influencers. Our tech influencers, right? They're built for YouTube. Their whole world lives in YouTube, right? So we're thinking about how they look, shoot, and act differently than we would for an NIL influencer doing something on the field, right? So which is typically more for TikTok. So we're very mindful of the platform translated to the screen and probably starting from the screen first. Thank you.
I only say that because everything's connected device, and you don't want to waste money in impressions, like figuring out, like if you're buying a streaming platform, like really kind of targeting which screen that gets displayed on, getting more for your money.
Get that, Havas? Thank you. Right.
Can we get more about the JBL snow party in Switzerland?
Do you want tickets to it, or are you asking about it? Okay. Yeah. So we have this two-part events culture, which is like create culture and hack culture. So the create culture is like build certain events that we build. Snow party is an example of that. So snow party doesn't exist, right? Whereas the Grammys exist whether JBL is there or not, right? Obviously, snow party is something JBL Fest, other than this year with South by, has been an event we created. And it's our chance to own the entire conversation, the entire look, the entire feel, and then how we use it, what we use it for. These events that we do, Snow Party being an example, typically are announcement platforms. So we'll use it for some significant announcement. South by Southwest, there will be, very far from being able to announce what it is. There will be a significant product announcement that will support it. Snow Party typically has been an ambassador announcement event. But that's one that we use. So it's in it's actually technically in France. It's like right in the Alps where they kind of right by each other. And we do in-store promotions in U.S., Europe, and Asia Pacific, where you can go in store. In the U.S. you can't do buy-and wins, right? But in other countries you can. So they'll do buy-and wins. So you'll go into a Fnac in Europe, and there'll be Snow Party activation materials everywhere. And you'll go and try to win a chance to go to Snow Party. And then we'll send you out there. We've got ambassadors like Martin Garrix out of Europe, DJ Tiger Lily out of Asia, out of Australia, and they're performing. It's a beautiful, intimate little mountain experience. JBL Fest, a little different. It's traditionally been in Vegas. This year, we're moving it to Austin. It's much more of actually, it's primarily an influencer content play for us at the end of the day.
Yeah, this is in regard to your relationship with your field in the NIL space. How far in advance do you guys vet the athletes out before, forming the partnership?
I mean, so it's a great question. How far do you vet the athletes out? So it's a really nuanced balance, right? Because you can't go so far out because A, you don't know who's going to a draft. You don't know who's not returning. You don't know who's going to have a bad season, right? But you can't go so close in, you don't have time to get the content you want. It's one of the biggest stresses we have about that. I mean, we signed one of the biggest college football running backs of the season. We were so excited the first week he blew out his knee, right? So these things happen. Now, in an instance like that, we took it as a chance to actually double down with him because, first of all, you don't want to be the brand that walks from the hurt player. So we were like, let's really get focused on his rehab, his whole story arc around how JBL is helping him through this unforeseen adventure in his life, an unfortunate adventure. But that is one of the biggest challenges we have, especially when you're going into the summer one, because so we try to be ready for back to school. So it's like, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen with some athletes, right? Some tennis player goes on a run and they go into the U.S. Open and they take the money or they stay, they go pro, right? So there's a really interesting. We literally are like, where are the athletes? Where are the athletes? It's one of our biggest things we're doing constantly as we're getting into these seasons to launch. But our focus for this year was have content ready for back to school. Because a lot of these kids, like my son's a freshman in college, right? He goes to college, he's got JBL, but like everyone else is like, what should I buy? So let's have that content ready for them so when they get back to school and these athletes are saying, hey, I'm getting ready, I can't wait to get to school, got my JBLs ready, then that student goes, I should get some JBLs for my dorm for studying or whatever. So
yeah, the quick follow-up to that would be how quick can content be produced? Say that video on Saturday, college football, compared to that game, you want to have a uptick product in there.
as quickly as we can. I mean, sometimes you get crap back, right? Sometimes the content's not good. Sometimes there's stuff in the background that has to come down. So it's a very iterative, quick turnaround as fast as we can, though. I mean, some athletes get it and you're like this, and some are like on round 4 and you've missed game day, right? So it's a complete crapshoot. When we have the entire spectrum, right? We've got the ones that are so good, and we got the ones that are like, we have no idea what's about to come out, or you've got to remove you got a big bomb in the background. Could you please remove that? Like these things happen.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, you mentioned the college age consumer being critical for turning them into lifetime customers, but then you also mentioned now you're shifting into like the high school gamer. Just wondering if you could elaborate on that and if you're actually looking at younger consumers now, or if psychology is still sort of the focus.
That's a great question. So the 100%, the college age student is the critical consumer for us for consumer audio. Gaming, all the insights that we had around when gamers start and when gamers are sort of forming their decisions are a lot younger. So those are the high school kids who are, even elementary school kids, right, who are getting their first $25 gaming headphone with a little boom mic, right? So we decided that gaming is an area that actually should age down more so than your $300, your $400 product. So gaming will be younger, and all consumer audio, sans gaming and sans luxury, which is obviously older, is going to be in that college sweet spot for us.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Half hour spent. Terrific, thank you.